Mississippi, Mr. Guest, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us today and reviewing the information that you submitted to this committee. I see that in the category where you address is challenges at the border. You state that the number of encounters at the border has been elevated. You go on to say this resulted in a substantial strain on the processing, transportation, and holding capacity of the U.S. Border Patrol. Later, you say as a result of the recent surge in unaccompanied children, this presents a serious challenge to DHS. I know you've made previous statements. Previously, I believe you said that we are on pace to encounter more individuals on the southwest border than we have in the last 20 years. Mr. Secretary, last time you were here, when questioned by Ranking Member Katko, he asked, given the tremendous rise and surge of individuals coming to the border, wouldn't it be fair to call this a crisis? Your response was, I'm not spending any time on the language that we use. I'm spending time on the operational response to the situation at the border. You make that, and then we see today a budget that has no increased funding for key frontline agencies. And so my first question to you, Mr. Secretary, is that when compiling these budget requests, did you consult with our state and local partners that we rely on so frequently as we attempt to secure our homeland?
Congressman, thank you so much for your question. I have most certainly engaged with state and local law enforcement throughout my 4-month tenure. I have done so regularly, not only with chiefs of police, but with sheriffs and on occasion rank and file, so that I understand what is being experienced on the ground and best able and equipped to respond to it most effectively. Most certainly I have engaged, and I will continue to do so. In fact, if I may, I have elevated the position that was in the prior administration a deputy assistant secretary for state and local law enforcement to the position of assistant secretary for state and local law enforcement. In addition to that, I designated an individual, a former chief of police, as a senior counselor to ensure that our engagement with state and local law enforcement is both as robust as possible and effective in implementing the policies and procedures that we are tasked to perform.
And Mr. Secretary, I appreciate that open line of communication. I do see here where the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, last week announced plans to build a wall on the southwest border. And I see that the budget request that you submitted has no funding for additional wall construction. Governor Abbott said our efforts will be effective if we work together to secure the border, make criminal arrests, protect landowners, rid our community of dangerous drugs, and provide Texans with the support they need and deserve. This is what he referred to in his statement as an unprecedented crisis. And so in reviewing the request that you have since submitted specifically as it relates to the southwest border, I see as it relates to U.S. Customs and Border Patrol that we're looking at roughly a $1.9 million less this budget year than last. No funding for additional Border Patrol agents or CBP officers, no funding for additional wall construction. I've personally had the opportunity to visit the border, to meet with many of our frontline officers who are working extremely hard to contain what I believe is truly a crisis at the border. And so my question is, based upon the previous statements that you've made to this committee, that you've submitted in writing, that you've made to the public, could you please walk me through and explain to me the reason for the decline in CBP's budget request, the lack of additional funding for Border Patrol agents, the lack of additional funding for CBP agents, and the rationale behind no additional wall funding, when clearly the governor of Texas thinks that it is very important, to the point that he has already committed $250 million of taxpayer money from the people of Texas to build additional wall funding.
Congressman, let me take a step back, because we take a look at the border as a whole. It is not a one size fits all. The border is very dynamic and there are different needs and challenges in different parts of the border. Number one, with respect to the brave men and women of the United States Border Patrol, we are very focused on hiring, recruiting and hiring individuals to fill the vacancies. Number two, we are studying border wall construction. We have already focused on repairing roads and levees where that work is needed. We are looking at particular gaps in the wall and determining what is the best course of conduct to secure our border. And number three, and this is a vitally important consideration, is innovation and technology as the greatest force multiplier in the service of border security. And that has been a bipartisan position ever since I have worked in the Department of Homeland Security. And I am 20 years in to federal service this month, both as a member of the Department of Homeland Security and as a federal prosecutor. And I remember very clearly and very powerfully my meeting with Senator John McCain and his advocacy to me about the need to focus on technology, that the innovations in modern development serve as the greatest force multiplier and have the greatest impact in ensuring our security. And I agreed with him then, and we are executing on that approach now. Not at the expense
Gentleman's
of other.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from